Welcome back to the games, gamers. That's right. I'm giving you something you've never seen before in regards to Star Citizen. I'm giving you the complete comprehensive guide of lore for the game, which is huge. Because there's no video out there on YouTube like this. That's what we do here on the games. That's why you keep coming back here. That's right, because I'm giving you information and videos that are entertaining, that teach you something very cool that, you know, took me a week of immersion, and I'm going to teach it to you in under an hour, which that's valuable. Tell your friends. Tell everybody. Anyway. Here's my information in Star Citizen. Very cool. I just created my own corporation. If you guys want to join it, go ahead. I'm going to go lazy mode about it to begin with, but then we'll make it pretty cool once the game goes live. Now, let's start at the very beginning. Let's get to the info. 2075, the invention of the quantum drive. That's pretty much the first tidbit of humanity that's interesting to the people of 2946, which it is the current year. 900 years later, approximately, since the quantum drive. It was 1/100th the speed of light. Now it is 1/5 the speed of light, so we can travel just about anywhere and corrupt everything possible in human fashion. Now, what got me interested in this? The Ark Map. The creation of the Ark Map in 2800. Let's look at it. And here is the beautiful Ark Map. I absolutely fell in love with this. The developers did an amazing job with it. Thank you. This actually was the springboard for me being interested in learning about what it is that I am teaching you now. Okay, so 2800, the Ark Map was created in the Tevarin system, which we're going to check out first. So let's type in Tevarin. Yeah, you're live with me. Let's see here, Tevarin. That's kind of how I roll when I do these. Whoa, yeah. Oh, snap. So now we are interested in finding where the location of the Ark Map is, and I bet it's this station right here. Yes, maybe? Yes. It was built in the fall of the Messer regime, which was one of the leaders of the UEE. Now, we'll go back and we'll talk about the divisions of government, or the evolution of the government on Earth, which is what we'll do after this. So you have your different races, which we're definitely going to get into on this video. You have the Banu, which was the first alien race that we encountered. I'll put some pictures up of the Banu. They are a trading race, primarily docile, and are friendly with everybody because they want to make a buck. Not every Banu is like that, but for the most part, that's how we are classifying the Banu. Now, to the west, there are the Vanduul. So the Vanduul are to the western systems in the galaxy. The Xi'An are to the right, okay? The Kr'Thak, which we just found out about, are farther right. We just found out about them recently. So again, this is all shotgun information, but we'll go into all the races and the specifics of them. I just want to give you a layout of the land, as it were. And I would imagine as time develops that the map will expand. It is Chris Roberts. It is the amazingness. And I will imagine that a lot of these systems also will be updated based upon what's happening currently. You know, I could imagine easily that the Vanduul come in and they take particular systems away from the UEE, or vice versa, based upon, you know, the actual in-game events. Please, devs, if you're listening to me, let this happen. It's very important for this to be a live map, not just a static map. I mean, you made it live thus far. Let's not ruin it. So there we go. I think we've beat that horse. Let's go to Seoul. Yes. Now, I'll just, again, because I've immersed myself so much, I'll continue talking. I hope you're enjoying this. Relax. I'll give you 1 second to grab something to eat or drink.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go!
Let's spin it around. You spin me right around, baby, right around like a record. Okay, now, Earth. Okay, again, love the map. Absolutely love the map. Now, you'll notice these little hexagon things on the planet, okay? Or are they hexagons? Yes, they are hexagons. Look at that. I know geometry. Oh, God. All right, now, get some information about the Earth. I don't know enough about it. I'm on the planet. I know nothing about you, Earth. No, okay, so there's 3 landing zones. All right, New York, Moscow, Shanghai. You can even get further information. You know, again, amazing job with the Ark Map. All right, so the 3 different governments, all right, it started out very early with the UNE, which is the United Nations of Earth. And the United Nations of Earth basically formed because all the people on the planet basically said, hey, you know what, since we have the quantum drive, since we're out there exploring, and since we've actually started to create habitable planets, which we'll get into on the timeline earlier, let's just be one actual planet of people. Let's not draw lines. Let's be a whole Earth unit, as it were. Wow, did we actually do that as a race before we blew ourselves up? And Star Citizen, yes, congratulations humans, you have survived to the next level of the game. So hopefully that eventually happens to us. Would be great. I mean, I'm hoping for that as well. So the United Nations of Earth was then formed to come together as a human race and infect the rest of the galaxy. Yes. No, we're good. We're essentially good people. So very interesting, because over time what happens is the United Nations of Earth becomes the United Planets of Earth, or United Planets of Earth, which is the next step in 2500. Again, we'll get into the details. I just want you to understand what happens to the government. It evolves. So, you know, in 2500, which is basically 400 plus years ago from current date, what happens is the government then realizes, hey, we have a whole bunch of planets now that we're colonizing. So now we need to kind of like say, hey, we're a whole bunch of planets. We're humans with a whole bunch of planets. Okay. Okay. And then as it becomes more expansive and we just continue to dominate the galaxy and we take system after system after system, what ends up happening is the final stage of evolution currently to the 2900 year is we turn into the United Empire of Earth. Now we've become an empire. Now we're very Romanesque, you know, because there's just so much that we own. Now we need, you know, basically to become an empire. So really interesting how the development of the government happens on the Earth. Let's check out the timeline. And I want to show you a really cool tool that I found, gamers. I hope you're learning a lot. I hope I'm not talking too much for you guys, but there's a lot of talking in this. I'm teaching, and I hope that this is a very relaxing atmosphere as you learn. Now, let's go to the timeline, and let's learn the events that happen from the quantum drive to the Banu, which was the first alien race that we encounter. Alright, and here we have something very cool. I have the link down below in the description. Check that out later, gamers. You can get much more in depth. We're going to kind of gloss over this so you have a general understanding of what's going on within this video and within Star Citizen. That's how we do it. We're like the crib notes. And then if you need to study a little bit more, got the description below, because that's how awesome it is here. All right, 2075, Roberts Space Industries. Very cool that they introduce RSI into this as the first footnote in humanity that is important to the people of 2946, which is the quantum core engine technology, which gives us the quantum drive. When you click into this, you will notice that you can click the want to know more button, and it will take you to articles within the Roberts website, which is amazing. The next footnote, a terraforming patent is created by RSI. All of a sudden now we have the ability to terraform planets. So we terraform Mars 7 years later, and then there's a huge massive failure and 4,870 workers die. A miscalculation in atmospheric processors made the atmosphere unstable. Sorry. Whoops. Whoopsie. In 2140, we say screw that. Okay, let's get back to ships. We don't need to die on planets anymore. So they developed the first starship, which I think is pretty cool. I would actually like to have like a relic like this within my own hangar. I think that would be kind of awesome. Okay, it's called the Zeus. Okay, a little bit big-headed by Robert Space Industry, but you know, they make the first starship. Why wouldn't you call it Zeus? All right, 3-passenger explorer. Brings exploration to the masses. People are now wanting to get out there and explore on their own. We do have a great exploration video. Check that card out. In 2157, Mars is terraformed successfully. We're trying to forget about the 4,000 plus people that died, and then boom, nothing really happens until 2214. So you'll see that that is a pretty big gap right there. Not that large, but one of the largest yet that I've seen on the timeline. Technology breakthrough, another one just as important as the quantum drive. RSI engine is released, allowing travel up to 1/10 the speed of light. Okay, so now we're talking about upgrading the quantum drive. So the quantum drive then becomes more upgraded, and speeds are increased, giving us more versatility and range. Then in 2232, first colonial flight. It's getting serious business mode. Captain and crew of thousands of volunteers are placed in stasis for flight, but the ship disappears. And there's a really cool article I read about this, where basically the pilot tells the artificial intelligence to think outside of the box. I don't think you should tell artificial intelligence that, because it certainly did. So far outside the box that now we can't find the ship. So that would be cool though. Imagine flying around the galaxy of Star Citizen and finding the Artemis, which was the name of the first ship. So valuable, so cool. I hope it's out there. Alright, Niso Triangle. Basically it's a series of ships that disappear around the same area. There is a fan-based message here of people disappearing. Let's listen to this here. Let's see what there has to be heard from the Niso Triangle when people disappear. This is out of our ancient history in 2262. Let's listen.
Beginning archive playback.
Copy that. Adjusting course 278.
Y'all got it sorted out?
I think so. Gave us a bit of a scare, but I think we're okay.
How's it looking? We're back on track?
You guys good? Back to send a tow.
No, we got engines back up. And nav's online. Huh? What the hell is that? Hey, Pete, do you see...
Signal lost.
Interesting. So nobody knows what's going on in this particular area, and then what's found are the first jump points ever. Now, interestingly enough, southern accents still exist in 2262. Kind of disappointed by that. No offense, southerners. I mean, I was just hoping that the whole, kind of dialects would just, be one dialect by the year 2262. But no, we still have southern draws. Interesting. 2262, still southern accents. Love you, southern ladies. Love the southern belles. I do. All right. 2271, first jump point discovered. Okay, whoops, it's not necessarily a triangle. It is a giant hole in the fabric of time that transports me to other places. 10 years of study. Nick goes to investigate the area and then discovers the first jump point. Okay, so he's the first human to travel to another system. And then the null system is discovered, which is a important area later on. So now we are jumping to 2380, almost 100 years later, and this is what we were talking about earlier in the video, that the United Nations of Earth is thus born. I mean, like, it's 300 years after the fact of the technology breakthrough of the quantum drive. So, we've got to definitely say, all right, everybody, join hands and let's sing Kumbaya. Now let's go out and make lots of money. All right, first contact. There we are, the Banu, 2438. right, here we go. The Banu, the first alien that we had discovered in 2438. I will be going to the Ark Map shortly to show you the system that we discovered them in, Davian system by Vernon Tarr. He thought it was another explorer that was competing with him, so he opened fire on the alien craft, not realizing that it was in fact an alien, and then he reported it to the UNE forces. Whoops, sorry, I thought it was just another human, and I'm just a cold-blooded murderer. But now Neil Sokolovic kept it secret who was the general, because it was reported to him, and then they made Vernon Tarr a hero. His history books are great, aren't they? So, very cool. Banu are a trading merchant type species that focus primarily on one thing: money. They love the money. Gotta have that money, yo. And there's not many systems that are run by them. Again, we will go to the Ark Map and I will show you what systems that they own. There aren't very many. And the political system is very kind of helter-skelter, knit together by, again, money. It's a republic of planet states, each run under its own political system. So, you know, each planet has a different political system. But again, all focused on capitalism. The leaders or selected representatives of each planet gather for a quorum to discuss and debate legal and trade issues that affect the entire species. Now, they all gather on a planet called Bacchus. Again, we will go to the Ark Map to show you all of this, but I want to get through a lot of this information because it's important to understand, you know, who or what it is that you're dealing with when you're in the game. They're very friendly because, again, they want to do what? Say it with me again. We're going to say this word a lot when we describe the Banu. Money. Yes, they're friendly with the UEE, with the Xi'An, with even the Vanduul, which I find surprising. You know, what kind of relationship is that? When I went to look at the wiki, it did say that they were precarious with them. So, but they are friendly, and it breaks down to a planet-by-planet basis generally. On the clan that they're dealing with the Vanduul. We will get into the Vanduul's different kind of archetype when we get to them, but I find it really interesting that they are friendly with anybody. It doesn't say anything about them in the Kr'Thak. I would imagine that any relations with the Tevarin are null and void, as the Tevarin species has pretty much merged with the UEE. I will get into them as well. Now, the military with the Banu, they can pull together a formidable fighting force. They do not have a dedicated military or a standing army, but the Banu militia, which is their peace initiative, basically, day-to-day kind of security force called the Banu militia. And the militia operates on a rotational basis, drawing volunteers, even criminals, which I found really cool, from the various inhabited planets that they own. And they tend to keep an eye on their own space, and they have like a fast and loose kind of approach when it comes to bolstering systems when in danger, which I think that's kind of really cool if you think about it. You know, it's a very rebel type way to deal with very militia forming type of thing, which makes sense with the species. It seems like they're kind of like vagabonds, like traveling all over space trying to make those credits. And if something happens within their own area, which is a very small area in space, we will look at that again on the Ark Map, but that particular portion of space, they're like, hey, I don't think they could really own a lot of systems based upon the way, based upon their nature. It should be interesting as the Ark Map expands to see if there are more Banu systems. But the crime that they have to deal with is pretty interesting. There's tons of criminals in the Banu area. They call it the Banu Protectorate, and it is a haven for UEE criminals. So this is pretty cool. If you are a bandit or if you are a pirate of sorts, then the Banu systems should be interesting hangout for you. You should be very familiar with their systems, because it sounds as if they're the only type of organized area where you can kind of chill out and relax without being hunted. But it is an area where you can find both very, gritty, nitty, kind of shady characters alongside kind of very formidable political powers. I think that's kind of an interesting duality, you know. So it should lend itself to a lot of different flavors on the Banu planets when going down and visiting. I think that would be a lot of fun. That's my kind of style. I think that the Banu sound like a very interesting race. It sounds like if you're in the game for trade, if you're in the game for kind of like more of a villainous kind of criminal or freelancer type character role play that you want to get into, that it sounds like Banu would be an interesting area to kind of hang out. All right, I hope you're enjoying this video here on The Games Gamers. We're going to be going on the timeline again. If you guys are enjoying this, please support us here at The Games. To make more content for you. We need help on our Patreon page. Here is our card. Thank you very much for the consideration. Now let's get back to the timeline. We just met the Banu, and now who's the next alien that we're going to actually visit? Let's go through the timeline until we hit our next alien here. So we had the first contact in 2438 where we almost blew up the Banu. Then we became really good friends. Wonderful. Now we can trade and make tons of money and learn new technologies, of course. And then we start leaving Earth because expansion is going crazy. 30 years later, we're still doing it, and not until 2516 does something happen. So nearly almost 50 years later, what ends up happening is we settle a planet called Terra, which is a pretty big thing actually. It's like a super Earth, and it becomes kind of like the new Earth because it's a larger Earth, and they're like, hey, you know, we're Terra and we're awesome. And there's kind of like this interesting duality between Earth and Terra. It's a love-hate relationship. The UPE is then founded. Obviously we are going planet by planet, and we are colonizing like mad. 70% of humans live off-world. So the UPE is formed. We did talk about this earlier. This is the second evolution of the government, which is, the UPE is much more kind of almost dictatorial in a fashion with a smile on it. And then we make contact with the Xi'An. Ooh, what an interesting race. What happens here with the Xi'An? They kind of look very turtle-like, almost kind of like lizardy dinosaur kind of thing, and they live very long lives. We stumble into their territory. We don't realize that we're in their territory, and we just start terraforming some of their planets, and the High General is criticized for being a little too aggressive. Now let's talk about the Xi'An. Alright, here we are, the Xi'An, the second alien race the humans encountered. Basically, we found them because we were just expanding so much. We were expanding so much that we started populating systems that we just thought, you know, hey, nobody else is out here. And through that process, as we colonized and terraformed, we ran into this species, and they said, no, 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 no. And things got a little hectic. There were smaller skirmishes from what I've read, and no major conflicts because both races found out that they had fairly well equal technology, and neither one wanted to obliterate the other from the face of the galaxy, because both races, the humanity and Xi'An, realized that they could do this to each other. It's a very tumultuous relationship, very similar to like America and Russia, or America and kind of like China, that tension where one can completely wipe out the other species. So it's kind of like smile, smile, little bits of skirmishes, tensions, and this has been the relationship since meeting the Xi'An through exploration in 2530 approximately. We do not know their home world. It has not been declassified, which is interesting. So they're more secretive. They're very careful with their information. So while we as humanity created the Ark Map through Messer, who we're going to get into, and once we start talking about the Tevarin, but Messer was a very influential leader in humanity. But as we got to this stage in the 2500s, a lot starts to happen here in the 2500s. with our race. You can see within the first 100 years, we meet another species of alien. So, 24, 38 or approximately, we meet the Banu, and then 25, 30, less than 100 years later, we are meeting the Xi'An. And, so we're starting to really start to put put our foot to the pedal to the metal, as it were, and expand, and we find the Xi'An. Now, it gets a little tense. We're going to fast forward a little bit, skipping over the Tevarin war, but we will talk about in 2789. There's an area called a line of systems called the Perry Line, and basically these were contested systems that were consisting of Tohil, Oya, Gurzel, Horus, and Pallas Hader, Indra, and Virtus, and these systems had to be split up amongst the UEE and the Xi'An. So basically they came to an agreement, and we decided that Tohil, Oya, Gurzel, and Horus would go to the UEE, and Pallas, Hader, Indra, and Virtus would then go to the Xi'An. So it's kind of very tension-filled between the UEE and the Xi'An. And still, we do not know their homeworld. They do live a long life. They are a monarchy. So, it's through the family line, and they live hundreds and hundreds of years. So they have very long lives, and they view humans as very short-lived creatures. But there is a sect of the Xi'An that like the human culture because it reminds them of their youth, and they can get away from what they believe to be a very oppressive monarchical regime. So they kind of go through a process where they become citizens of the UEE. So there are Xi'An citizens, and there is somewhat of a kind of a merging between the two species, but they are diplomatic geniuses. The Xi'An are diplomatic, very diplomatic species. They were hostile with us, but currently friendly. They're friendly with the Banu, of course we know this. They are indifferent with the Vanduul, so there is some fighting with the Vanduul, and of course with the Kr'Thak that we'll get into. They have been fighting them for a very long time, and are involved in a war called the Spirit War, which I don't know too much about. We'll look into that perhaps later when I talk about the Kr'Thak. They have no official religion. Crime is existing, but less crime than the UEE. So, there's less crime there. They pride themselves on having dignified criminals, if there are criminals. The Xi'An pirates and smugglers do tend to be younger, which they view as rambunctious youth. And basically, they act very slowly in their decisions. They take decades to make up their minds on just about anything. And we as humans cannot stand that. To us, we look at their culture as if it is very rigid and lifeless. We also look at them as kind of like more of a strange type of species where they can't relate with us. There's a us versus them kind of mentality. So, like I said, it is very kind of like America, Russia, America, China. And I understand what I see on the forums about the relationships, that where a lot of people relate the Xi'An to like the Chinese. They do kind of look like a Chinese dragon, or like, very reptilian. So like on the outside, you could imagine just the aesthetic of the Xi'An makes us kind of like a little bit wary, but they are very intelligent, and they are able to hold dialogue, unlike the Vanduul. And therefore, I believe that this species, while somewhat of a threat to humanity, is more positive as years pass on than negative. So really interesting species, the Xi'An. I like the looks of their technology. I like the looks of their ships. And they do own quite a bit of space to the eastern half of the galaxy map with us. I look forward to seeing how relations develop as years continue within the game. And at one point when we were at war with the Tevarin, which I will talk about soon, we were kind of like in a very bad predicament where we were kind of like in a pincer where we had the Tevarin to our west or southwest of us and the Xi'An to the east. And we did not want there to be like two fronts. We did not want to get squeezed, although Tevarin had lesser technology. And again, we will talk about that. But again, the Xi'An, very interesting species, and look forward to seeing more Xi'An ships and more Xi'An type tech. And let's go back to the timeline. And here we're back to the timeline. I really hope you're enjoying this, gamers. We're going to talk about the timeline. It gets really messy here in the 26th century, talking about the 2500s. Basically, we contacted the Xi'An in 2530. We discover a system called Idris. It is about to our southwest on the galaxy map, and then we kind of colonate it, and we get contact with another species of alien. Like, quite literally, we go from 2530 to 2541, and we've got our third species, the Tevarin. Before we talk about the Tevarin, a slight synopsis of what happened within the next 100 years. The Tevarin basically go after us because they want the systems that we occupy. They are 100 years behind us on tech. They just recently set out and are learning about the galaxy and decide that they're going to take our systems, and boy did they make the wrong decision doing that. But they fought valiantly. They are a combat culture. They don't combat for anything other than honor and taking systems. It's a very Japanese kind of Asian flavor with a Tevarin. And then there's the Battle of Idris. And then there's Operation Nemesis you can read about. And then Messer steps up, who's one of the soldiers, and he ends up being the leader of the UEE. At the time the UPE was founded, he eventually convinces people that the UPE is outdated and power should not be split between three factions within the UPE. It should just, we need to make quick decisions. We're in a time of war. We have the threat of the Tevarin, we have the threat of the Xi'An, because at that particular point in time there was still fighting going on in the Peri line, and there was kind of like a two-front thing going on. And then nearly 100 years later, let's see here, blah blah blah, we squelch the Tevarins, and then they come back. Kr'Thak, one of the Tevarin warlords, comprises another fleet to head back to Elysium, which they call Khalif, and they push very hard to take back their planet. And before we get into this, I will say that what ends up happening is that we defeat them. This is a painting called The Tears of Elysium, where a child was on the planet and saw basically the Tevarin just falling through the atmosphere back to their homeworld. 30% of the original fleet, not devastated, eventually realized they were defeated. Very sad day, very honorable in the eyes of the Tevarin, took off their shields and dove for their home planet in a last-ditch attempt to just be on their homeworld and basically bonsai, as it were. Very Japanese-esque, and I dig this species, and I think basically we're going to start talking about the Tevarin right now, which is one of my favorite species, and let's get talking about them. The Tevarin, a very honorable alien species, well, according to the Tevarin, but also to a lot of humans that look at the Tevarin and what ended up happening many hundreds of years later. although there was a very savage war that broke out between the Tevarin and the humans. Not many pictures of the Tevarin, in fact none known yet as of current date of this video. I think before we talk about what they probably are going to look like, because we do have some pictures which is going to be interesting, we'll get into, but I think it's important to look at the star system, the Ark Map, to see what systems they tended to congregate around. There are not very many left after this war. The Tevarin are very few in number after this war, and we'll talk about their mentality, their mindset, and as hundreds of years pass, where they're at now. But let's look at the Ark Map real quick and talk about that. Okay, so here we have the Ark Map, and as you can see, here's Seoul, where we originated from. We talked about the Banu, which are down here around Gedin, Galice and Bacchus and Yulin. They don't have a lot of systems. We talked about the Xi'An in the eastern half of the galaxy map over here. We talked about the tensions that were happening in the 2500s to 2600s with the Xi'An. And now here comes this species. Basically we find Idris, which isn't too far from Seoul, and the second we start colonizing Idris, we run across a new species, and I believe that the Tevarin are in these relative systems: Pharaon, Fora, Banshee, Garen, and Cabal. And then this is their home system, Elysium, where there is a very large climactic battle in which what ends up happening is that, like we said earlier on the timeline, that they just dive for Elysium 4, which I believe Elysium 4 is this guy right here, Jalan. Let's check it out. And yeah, the former Tevarin homeworld of Khalif. Jalan is a beautiful alien world known for its fields of stunning and bizarre rock formations. The planet still maintains some of the oldest Tevarin structures that managed to survive both wars, because there were two Tevarin wars, one in 26th century and then wrapping itself back up from the years, I believe, 2603 to 2610 thereabouts, relatively speaking. Don't stick me on those exact years, but there we're at on the second war. And only out of all the Tevarin fleet, 30% of them make it to this planet, which I find kind of fascinating. So they're fighting and they're going towards Jalan, and they realize that they have lost, and awe is lost, and that their species is basically on the brink of extinction, and they head towards Jalan. And as they're above their home planet and they realize that they're being wiped out by humanity, instead of surrendering, they drop their shields and they fall to the planet in burning cinders, which is just like, wow. So there's only a few Tevarin left currently, and this is their legacy that they leave behind. Let's talk about what they look like. They're basically the perspective now in the basically 30th century, 2945 to 2946. And let's talk about the remaining Tevarin. So the Tevarin, yes, within the span of approximately 69 to 70 years, we basically decimate an entire alien race. There's not many of them left. We met them in 2541 and 2610. During that time, there were two wars, and we basically wiped them off wiped them out of the galaxy. But the Tevarin were the first to strike, which I thought was really interesting. They struck at us first for our systems. They did lack the technology, like I said. This whole Battle of Idris introduced Messer, the leader of the UEE, disbanding the UPE after letting all humans know that we needed more direct, quick decision making. We needed an empire, and he was going to lead all of it. Interesting. So we completely abandoned the UPE, and basically from the UPE, the UEE is evolved. We then terraform the Tevarin systems for human colonization after their defeat, And the remaining Tevarin are then absorbed into the currently the UPE, then to the UEE. And most fled to the Banu or Xi'An system. So really interesting information. Most of the Tevarin actually fled, but those that were remaining absorbed into our own culture, which leads to a lot of infighting, which leads to a lot of stressors, but there's not very many of them, so it isn't that amazingly catastrophic to the human race. So we talked about how basically they dove back to their home planet and committed hara-kiri like Bonsai. The second defeat on the Tevarin race was very hard on all the Tevarin. Their political system was an oligarchy, feudalistic in nature. The military ran everything, so they put a lot of their confidence into the military that eventually failed them. Most of them feel because of that betrayed by even their own people. The highest title in their society was Warlord. It did sound more violent than what it really was. The Tevarin were not a bloodthirsty race. They were just honored in the art of war. Currently, obviously, they're assimilated now. A few Tevarin have been given citizenship. A few. But Tevarin citizens might be measured in triple or even double digits, so we're talking like in the hundreds. The rest, they don't care. They could care less. They're not very happy with the UEE. The Tevarin believe in honor. We just talked about that, fealty and duty. And so the Tevarin that are left, there's a sadness and there's an anger, a melancholy. The planet was lost. Their aggressive nature into addictions and violence is what many Tevarin then focused on. Tevarin mercs, plenty of mercenaries out there that are Tevarins that still kind of cling to the old warrior ways. And there are some that just completely forgot about it and are just cold killers now with no roots, no background. Most are terse and cynical, and we know why. But the Tevarin, what do they look like? A lot of people have no idea what the Tevarin look like. A lot of debate on the forums. I see many pictures. First, we have what appears to be on the first concept with like a large flat-headed creature. The second actually looking like Kilrathi. But I had actually done a lot of research on this and saw a little blurb that said that a Tevarin kind of looks like the background of the Kid Crimson magazines, and that might possibly be a Tevarin. And I also read something, and it was backed up by many other people, that Tevarins could fit inside of human suits. So possibly a very humanoid shape in nature, with, you know, maybe a flatter head that can fit in a spacesuit. Here's something I think that they most resemble currently. I could be wrong. Once the game is more finished, we will see what the Tevarin look like, but I do like to give you all the most information that I can at current day. So the Tevarin, a very cool species that are still scattered throughout the galaxy. Not many of them left. Very kind of warrior code Bushido attitudes back in the day, slowly being erased as the centuries roll on, where they have basically no home, and many of them are so scattered that they probably never see another Tevarin, which is this very forlorn kind of concept for an alien race, and I like that. I think that is a very cool backdrop for some very cool stories on this race. So the Tevarin, ladies and gentlemen, one of the alien races that you don't see much mention on. As I said, I'm giving you the complete alien lore guide. So let's get back to the timeline. Alright, and that kind of wraps up the Tevarin with the defeat of Kr'Thak, who is the last leader within the Tevarin sect to really try and push at becoming a successful race, to bring them back, to put them into power, but they just did not have the technology nor the numbers to take on humanity, and thus dove into their home planet. Again, kamikaze bonsai mode. You will be missed, Tevarin.
Very honorable warriors. There's still some of you left out there. Now, what we find is that ends up wrapping itself up in 2610. The feet of the Tevarin, now many are scattered across the galaxy in very low number. And the next thing that happens doesn't happen until 2638. 28 years later, the UEE becomes more empire-like, you know, a little bit more like Darth Vader empire-like. It starts to become a little bit more evil. The Imperator, which is the leader of the UEE, who is the all-powerful power making all decisions, who is Messer the 11th, from the same Messer line. This is interesting that so many Messers are the Imperators. It's basically becoming a monarchy in itself, kind of like the Xi'An a little bit, mirroring that. But you know, Senator San Akiran from Terra does not like what's going on with the UEE. He starts to see that there's something going on, and he doesn't like it. He calls for a vote of sovereignty for Terra, figuring, hey guys, Terra is a super Earth, and it is also a super Earth. It's better than Earth. Our ideals are different. We're more successful, and we don't like your agenda, UEE. We want to separate ourselves from it. Now, the Imperator does not like this, and suddenly, Kieran cannot be found anywhere. Dun 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 dun. And so the UEE becomes to very much so become more corrupt to the public eye. People start to see this now in the 2600s. And then something really interesting happens in 2681, the Vanduul. Yes, that's right, only a face a mother could love. The Vanduul. Humanity first encountered them in 2681 when they attacked human colonies in the Orion system. Very close to everything that was going on in the Tevarin area. So we just get done with a war. We're still having tension with the Xi'An, and then boom, this race comes along and starts attacking us. Right around the area where we just got done settling and getting rid of the Tevarin, and you know, we're kind of like, okay, one war's over, boom, here come the Vanduul, and they're not happy, they're not nice, they're evil. This is the type of race that you can't reckon with. In fact, it's mind-boggling to me that the Banu can even figure out how to trade with this race. They're very aggressive. They travel the galaxy in hordes, and they raid colonies to survive. They're like scavengers. During the raids, however, interestingly enough, they don't destroy communications towers, which I find very interesting. And we don't know what their home world is. We can't figure out what the Xi'Ans are. And we cannot figure out what the Vanduul are. Now, we're just having a hell of a time, aren't we? As far as their culture, little is known about the Vanduul. We really don't know much about them. They're very, like I said, aggressive, and they disperse into different hordes. So, interesting, their network of how they communicate might slightly differ based upon the different horde. They're massive. They're absolutely massive. The way that they procreate, almost like perhaps insects or like ants. It reminds me of. They're just colonies of hordes, and they separate and they fight amongst themselves. And there doesn't seem to be much order with the Vanduul yet. They do occupy systems to the west of us. You can see here on the Ark Map that there is a big swath of Vanduul to our west, which They're really close to us, and in a way, I'm sure the Xi'An probably like keeping us around as a buffer, because the Xi'An don't necessarily get along with Vanduul either, and I'm sure they'd probably rather deal with humans than they'd rather deal with Vanduul. Vanduul are the stuff that nightmares are made out of. We did happen to capture a Vanduul carrier designated the X-12, which was a huge carrier, dwarfing any other ship, including the Bengal carrier in the game. The X-12 was studied. DNA analysis uncovered a wide range of genetic diversity, implying social interaction beyond just a single horde, so multiple hordes. Also notable, all bodies studied from the X-12 were male, suggesting that there might be some type of female brooding plant of some sort. I mean, I almost kind of feel like very Zerg here or some, you know. Perhaps there are mating facilities. Kinky. Yeah, baby. Now, this is where I really find this is what I really find interesting. That knife imagery appears throughout their media, with printed images of knives being common on the walls of personal quarters. Their chapels feature elaborate stained glass images of knives. They're really into blades, and they're cutters. They're focused on this very sharp imagery. It seems to express itself in their starship designs, as you can see here in the Scythe. Please check out my Scythe review on this card. It was a fantastic ship to fly. I had a great time in the Scythe. It felt alien to fly this ship. I had a great time. I can tell you, probably one of my best experiences yet in the game was flying the Scythe. Almost wish that I could actually be a Vanduul, but I'll have to settle with the bandit. So, all in all, quite the aggressive species. There's no chance of being diplomatically friendly toward towards this race. And in the mind of Chris as well, I just saw a 10 for the chairman episode where he talks about the fact that the Vanduul are really a race that you don't want to interact with if you are a human, especially. It's one of those races when they come in, you either run or you better have a hell of a force fighting them. So the Vanduul, very aggressive race, kind of almost like a scavenger race, going around from system to system, plundering and taking things and using them for their own. And we don't know too much about them. In fact, a lot of their systems to the west we're still kind of clueless on. So this race, scary, 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 scary citizens. On to the timeline. All right, and rolling right through time, as it were, the year 2681. We just talked about the Vandals and how we encountered them, the founding of Arrowview Hangars. So, large ship manufacturer. We won't get into that too much. Cracks in the system. People are now doubting the UEE. The military stretched thin. Embracing for war with the Xi'An. Apparently there's some more trouble with the Xi'An around the 2700s. Things are really heating up with the Xi'An. We're chasing down Vanduul raiders, and we're trying to maintain security in the human systems that have been just, rampantly growing and pushing at the seams of the government of the UEE. And the Imperator's power is now waning. Okay, so, lots of years are now passing. The next thing that's notable is Store-All, which is, check out this card. I did a great video on Grabby Hands, which is a system they're using, the devs in Star Citizen,
on packing items within containers. It's great. Also had a great economy video on that one. Check that out. And now we're moving along to 2757. The current Imperator, again, part of the Messer line, continuing at 2757. Beginning to fall, the dominance of his reign, of the Messer reign, beginning to fall as the guardsman is killed and happens to be a child worker in a factory. So, you know, that's pretty low. You can't get much lower. The Messer's reign is coming to an end. The Vanduul attack Bolo. So the Vanduul, not the Vanduul. It's easy for me to say that, but actually pronounce it Vanduul. They attacked Bolo. And as soon as the UEE fleet arrived, the Vanduul fled. The Vanduul attack lasted 27 minutes. In that time, 14 souls were extinguished and millions in property. So the Vanduul continue to be a pain in the butt. Another spaceship manufacturer, Anvil Aerospace. We're all very familiar with them. So you're seeing a lot more manufacturers spring into existence, creating more StarCraft in the 2700s. Economies are forming. UEE is becoming more corrupt, and beginning of the end for the UEE, or at least for the Messer era, let's say. The UEE is still existing. Obviously, we're talking about the Messer regime, as it were. The military is still stretched thin, bracing for war, and basically, a gentleman named Nathan Warwick, who is an advocacy section chief in the Terra system. Again, Terra, here we go with Terra. Helped facilitate Senator Akari's meeting with the Xi'An to create the Kr'Thak Treaty that diffused tensions with the Xi'An and marked the beginnings of the end of the Messer era. Now, this is a very good article that I actually read about on RSI, and it talked about how he played a role in developing more friendly interactions with the Xi'An, which is really needed, really very needed at the time. Things could have gone the other way, and there could have been a large war with the Xi'An, which would not have been good for us as a race. The act of defiance, where Senator Akari of Terra refuses to fight the war that basically the UEE ordered him to fight, and Terra blasts Earth for being imperialistic and short-sighted, and seriously starts to question, you know, what's going on here? Why are you even part of this? And the Xi'An looks at the situation and says, oh, this is a great way to kind of divide the human empire, you know, because the Xi'An are very smart, a very smart alien race, and they want to take advantage of that. So they diplomatically think, well, let's be friends with some of the humans, but not all of the humans, and let's split them up and divide and conquer type mentality. The massacre of Garon, it's a terraforming corp, basically went onto the planet, and they go in and completely ruin this planet. It's a good article, and the people rise up and overthrow the particular government. The internet is called the Spectrum, which I think is pretty cool. And Aaron Toy of Earth becomes the new Imperator and promises an age of enlightenment. This was kind of like the last straw. They couldn't really much tolerate the Messer line any longer after this. Once they saw this planet basically getting wiped out, basically. So it was an ugly thing. It was like the last thing that humanity could take, and it's time to get new leaders. So we've got Nathan Warwick to be named as the first director in the new Office of Executive Services during Senate Subcommittees 2794. Before that, until 2789, Warwick served as an advocacy section chief, so he gets his own promotion with a wing in the government, which is interesting. And then they also create the Fair Chance Act, which is decreeing a capital crime to attempt to terraform planets with developing creatures, which is what happened at the massacre of Garen. You know, you can't develop a planet for your own species when there's already other species living on it. Pretty much is what the Fair Chance Act is saying. Apologies for my terrible interpretation of the massacre of Garon. It is now 3:40 in the morning, and I am trying to get this video out to you gamers. Yes, I am human. I am not Xi'An. All right, then we got the UEE Act, the UEE Ark, which we talked about earlier in the year 2800, which was really kind of a very cool event. I think in my mind, the way I viewed it is that it kind of fell flat on its butt. While it did invite the Xi'An Empire and the Banu and the Tevarin that were left, you know, it opened up all of our strategical positions on the galaxy map for other races, while the other races kind of didn't give us all the information that we needed. I mean, we still don't know the homeworld of the Xi'An. We still don't know the homeworld of the Vanduul, even though the Vanduul weren't part of this. But maybe some information could have been gleaned from this event. But at least the Ark was built and a database built so that we have this glorious, wonderful Ark map. And then we are fast forwarding. There are many, many years here where we are just moving ahead almost 100 years, and Kronos, which is a planet that is a complete synth planet, where now the UEE is you know, quite got its pockets quite full after the centuries of its existence, and says, hey, we're just going to take a rock and we're going to make it a planet. We're going to make it a livable, habitable planet, which was a massive undertaking. In 2884. So we're now 100 years. These are, notice, you know, there are not a lot of notable things happening now. There is a peace between Xi'An relatively with the humans. So, and I'm sure that there's still many actions going on with the Vanduul where you're fighting them. But in 2884 is the next notable event where the Chariot engine is created by Dr. Russell, and it's an antimatter type engine, and he was very proud of it until it blew up in his face. And that is a very funny article to actually read, believe it or not. We have the founding of Origin Jumpworks. We were very familiar with Origin Jumpworks, and actually the correlation of Origin Jumpworks to Origin to Chris Roberts, very special to him. One of his first companies, software companies. And we're going to 2896, which is the Khartu-al. I want to show you guys some footage here, which is really cool. It is not a publicly listed video on Star Citizen's webpage, but it shows you the ship that we basically have captured. And it is a very cool looking ship. It is one of the first ships that was an alien ship that we redesigned for humans. It's a scout type ship. I would like to do a video on that soon. That would be fun. Next, in 2898, we talk about a corporation named Voyager Direct that makes it possible to buy and sell anything anywhere through the spectrum and it being delivered. Very interesting company. We talk about the Origin 2 and 300 ships. And then the Vanduul Attack Squadron 42 in 2910, just for shits and giggles. Cool article. The battle lasted 6 hours, and there was a pilot named Nolan that was a very influential pilot that becomes very famous from this battle. Origin relocates, frustration of the masses. The synth world project of Kronos, which we talked about earlier, is just a complete waste. The Empire seems to be moving in the wrong direction. Vanduul attacks are again growing. We're still having issues with incompetence in the UEE. Kalos the Imperator campaign. Kalos Costigan starts a political campaign talking about the budget spiraling out of control and the synth world being a disaster, about the Vanduul attacks. and he says, "Hey, I'm running." So not too interesting there. Last Stand of Dean Keller. This was a really cool article in 2931. We were talking about organized piracy and organized syndicates, which I'm really into. I'm really into that type of lifestyle in the game, freelancing and making lots of money in that respect. Very, very interesting to me. And talk about the Keller run, which is really cool. Apparently he went up against 36 ships and lasted mostly the whole battle, but Anna Flynn took him down. But people talk about it to this day, and also possibly the reason why another form of self-government or government forming through this kind of subsect of humanity got squelched and squashed, because it seems as if Dean was the man who could have led the era of a new type of governing body that was like a governing body for the pirates and the smugglers, and basically forming a loose-knit type of syndicate that would have been a government that might have opposed the UEE, or might have worked its way to in conjunction with working with the UEE. But a very interesting event in 2931 with Dean Keller dying, and this is the reason why it says it cut down a second human political system, because that actually could have come about had he still been alive. We don't know. 2941 Historical Truth Act. I think this is directly relating to the fact that you are noticing some systems that look encoded, that look as if there's not enough information on it, but more information than what you had previously in the Ark Map. When I went on the Vanduul section, you will notice that when I look in the Orion system, you'll see what I'm talking about. Declassifying millions of pieces of archived data, and then 2944 Anvil introduces the Hornet. Oh, I'm sorry. And the Xi'An, first Xi'An store in the UEE. And it does not talk about the Kr'Thak. And Kr'Thak is kind of where I want to go to end this video. And the mysterious Kr'Thak. Yes, almost as mysterious as the Tevarin. Really, we should know more about the Tevarin than we do know about the Kr'Thak, and it is basically because of the lack of planning or the lack of focus in developing both races by SIG at the current moment. The Kr'Thak, I believe, will still be in the game. A lot of people throwing their hands up in the air and saying, "What about the Kr'Thak? What's going on with the Kr'Thak?" Not a lot. There are no current images of this particular alien species. There is a news article that I do have in the description that you can click on and read. Basically talking about how the Xi'An have kept them from us for whatever the reason, whether they're an amazingly huge threat and worse than the Vanduul, or whether the Xi'An want to keep that area locked, because they are a very secretive race. So it does make sense that we only now are finding out about a 300+ year war that the Xi'An have been having with the Kr'Thak, called the Spirit War. Should be interesting as the game gets closer to being released. There is rumor that the race will be flushed out and ready to go. There is a lot of speculation as to what they will look like. The wiki does say that the Kr'Thak are a migratory species among the systems that they own, which makes me think that they might be bird-like. Maybe they might look like a bird. There's a couple people speculating that they are robotic in nature. There's a couple people, which I'm not gearing towards that with that particular type of name. It just doesn't sound very AI. And why would they be migratory? It would make no sense. Also, there is some rumors that they might be like looking like dragons. I don't know. I think the Xi'An already have that reptilian type of look. I think there's enough of that reptilian type of look in the game. If the devs are listening, I would probably tell you to make them look bird, like an avian-like, minus the flu. So, you know, the humanity really wants to know what's going on. We don't. And this is basically just about as up in the air as the Tevarin are as far as what they look like. Please check out the article. And gamers, that's your video on the lore and aliens of Star Citizen. I hope it was complete enough for you. I am thinking of making more videos that will get more in depth and more thorough about the relations between all of the species, and talking more about historical events if you are interested, where we can take specific historical events and then really dissecting them like I want to. Unfortunately, we are way past our time, and gamers, please tell your friends, help us grow. And for those that are just rocking it out, thank you. Don't forget about our giveaway. The video will be coming up shortly. We are giving 2 games away in November. We are calling it the November giveaway. We always give away games here on the games every single month, and we make this a place that you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the community, having a great time with our Steam group, checking out the Facebook page, tweeting on the Twitter. Do you know? So I really appreciate you, gamers. Thank you for staying and spending some time with us here. More Star Citizen on the way.